Good morning. I think it's time to start. It's 9:45. And as we talked about Sunday school, I realized that I didn't ask anyone to teach. So I wasn't preaching today, so I'm teaching. So I know I'm not doing anything. That's right. Not doing anything. Yeah. So we're going to be using for the next 4 or 5 weeks, it's called the Wired Word. And it's using a story of today that's in the news and discussing it with using some scripture and talking about how it is affecting us. And so Wes has volunteered to teach Advent study, so Wes will be teaching when Advent comes. If someone would like to volunteer to teach a week at a time, and I have next week's couple of lessons from the Wired Word. So if someone would like to volunteer to teach, we'll just kind of play it by ear as we go through these next few weeks until Advent, and then Wes will be ready to do the Advent study, okay? So today we're talking about the full Bible is now available in American Sign Language. Answered prayer. Sign Language Bible completed after 39 years. That's the way the American Bible Society headlined its news about the release of the full Bible in American Sign Language. But those of us who are not deaf may wonder why a sign language Bible might be desirable, since deafness doesn't preclude the ability to read a regular printed text. Melanie Clinton, writing for the Southern Baptist Church's International Mission Board, tells us why the sign language Bible is needed. Written language is not a deaf person's heart language, she says. Our heart language is the one that we feel most comfortable speaking. Eventually, when we're having deep conversations, especially when we're having deep conversations, it's typically the first language that we learned, the one that we think and dream in. Deaf people's heart language is signed, not written. Clinton acknowledges that many deaf people have learned to read, but adds that the linguistic structure of written languages are so different from signed languages that it's like learning a foreign language while simultaneously learning to read. The foreign, written language will generally never feel as natural as sign. Ruby Green, a deaf missionary in Central Asia, explains, sign language is how we process things. It's how we view things. It's how we understand ourselves and how we understand God. If we can receive the word in sign language, the barriers are gone. It goes straight to our heart. The word then comes alive. It's vivid and real. Many deaf people do not read or prefer not to read, Clinton says. Some deaf choose not to read, just like many English speakers choose to never learn a second language. Some can read things like text messages, signs, and basic instructions, but they struggle to read more complex works like the Bible. Many other deaf persons, especially in developing nations, are ostracized by society, and they're never given a formal education, Clinton explains. Christianity Today tells how Rinka Dunn, a deaf person, talks about having the Bible in her own language for the first time, and knows that she emphasizes the adjectives. In English, she has no problem understanding the people, places, and things in Scripture, but in her own language, the nouns vibrate with life and emotion. The clapping trees, the singing birds, the dancing meadows, the persistent Esther, the revengeful Saul, the weeping Magdalene, most of all, our loving Jesus. American Sign Language is not English turned into hand motions. Rather, it's a full language developed by deaf people into their own vocabulary and grammar. Thus, creating the ASL Bible was a lengthy project requiring effort from a skilled group of deaf people trained in biblical languages. Harold Noe, a Hebrew and Greek scholar who worked with deaf missions, said in a 2004 interview that the translation can be difficult because ASL has a different syntax than English. The same sign used for resurrection is the sign for stand up. Noe said, I recall working with some children at Iowa School for the Deaf. When I signed this sign for resurrection, the kids would stand up. And I kept saying, no, it's not time to go yet. The work on the ASL Bible translation began in 1981 when Dwayne King, a minister in the Independent Christian Church, who was a hearing person, recognized that English was not the heart language of deaf people in America. Although a hearing person, King had previously started a church for the deaf and learned to sign. But many deaf people didn't attend because they couldn't understand what was going on. So King decided the Bible needed to be translated into ASL. Working with deaf missions, he helped to start the project. Other Bible translation agencies, including the Deaf Bible Society, provided the additional support. We note that some announcements as the completion of the ALS Bible described it as the first such Bible. That overlooks the fact that in March of this year, the Jehovah's Witnesses announced that their ASL Bible was complete and ready for use. We suspect, however, because the Jehovah's Witnesses have their own translation of the Bible, the New World Translation, which sometimes renders key passages such as those about the nature of Jesus Christ differently from the English language Bible translations that are orthodox. Christian groups discount the Jehovah's Witnesses ASL Bible. Thus, we can probably say that the new Bible just completed is the first mainstream ASL Bible. The ASL Bible is available online for free. And you can read more about this story. It's in Christianity Today, but there's a website on here that gives it's www.deafmissions.com/ASLV. What do you think is meant by one's heart language? So the one that the people are most comfortable speaking or communicating?
Sometimes we won't communicate that way. We feel it when we don't speak it.
Sometimes we feel things. We don't speak. We feel it, but we don't speak it.
We don't want to go ahead and say it.
Sometimes we can't say it, can we? We can't get it out. Yeah. Can't find words to say it.
I've heard people say, I'm going to talk to you right from my heart. I've heard it said.
Yeah, I'm going to talk from my heart.
And you can tell when they are without them saying that.
You can tell when somebody's really.
Students over the years, you would notice that, and other teachers would notice. Kids would say things, it came from another place.
Yeah. Okay. What do you think would be the more difficult, to be unable to see or to be unable to hear? We,
Audiology is told that every day.
we all have to learn how to not hear, and sometimes as we get older, our ability to see kind of goes too, doesn't it?
And I say seeing because it's hard sometimes. Like, I mean, Will and I, we were talking and we like seeing each other smile. So you communicate with vision,
Yeah.
and then you're also able to read people's facial expressions. So, it's one or the other, really. I mean, if you have any vision problems whatsoever, I think you tend to appreciate, being able to see. Because I don't always get my glasses out and things are blurred, just, you know.
Being able to see, and this has come to reality when we put the masks on and we can't see each other's faces, we can't see smiles, and we don't recognize people, do we?
I think it would be worse to lose your sight because most women talk with their hands. So if you can't see that, you're in trouble.
You can't see that coming. You're
Well,
you're in big trouble.
here,
Aren't you?
They talk an awful lot with their facial expressions.
We do.
oh yes, there's a few that you're scared to death of.
They actually work both ways.
But those facial expressions make a difference. Yes. I think it would be very hard not to see and not to.
I think we can navigate the world easier with sight than we can with hearing. And so maybe that's why, the loss of sight would be harder than the loss of hearing. But, I've never experienced loss of hearing. I don't, I don't have glasses, I can't see. So I do know that feeling, and it's not a good feeling not being able to see.
So we feel like not seeing then would be harder than not hearing. But I've not been able to not hear either, so I'm not sure.
I had a friend who had always had good hearing. In her retirement years, she went to bed hearing and woke up and could not hear anything.
Wow. One day, change.
It's been corrected, and it was a brain tumor. And she got the implants, which has helped. But I can imagine when sudden, either one's tough.
Yeah, I would say either one is pretty tough, I think.
With hearing, if we listen, if we pay attention. The same way with sight. Because most everybody in here's found out if they're working on a car, sometimes you can't get their head far enough away.
Yeah.
You reading from your notes, you got glasses on, but to look back off in the room, you take them off.
We
Slow, and you kind of adjust.
kind of adjust as we go. Yeah, we do adjust. So not being able to ever see or hear may be different than someone.
The body compensates.
Our body does compensate for that, and
Particularly if one eye goes, the other improves. I'm sure hearing improves with loss of sight.
I'm sure one sense gets better when the other's not working.
Right.
My mom has experienced some significant loss of hearing as she's aged. And I think that it's more frustrating for me, for her not to hear, than it is for her not to hear. Because, it's just the constant repeating, the constant getting louder. And she will get frustrated, but I think I get way more frustrated than she does.
So it's frustrating for us not to be able to speak or hear our language, right? So if we can't hear each other and can't communicate, that's very frustrating, isn't it?
Loss of hearing isolates you.
Isolation with loss of hearing.
I mean, just to be in a room like this with other people and not be able to hear what people are saying, you feel isolated.
And you won't say anything yourself because you're going to answer wrong. I've done that.
sometimes
So then you just won't do it.
we were at a funeral home not too long ago, and everybody was wearing masks, and Keith's uncle was talking to us and talking to us and talking to us, and I looked at Keith and I said, "Did you hear anything he said?" And he said, "No." And I said, "But we've been answering yes the whole time." So we felt pretty isolated, but we were still shaking our head yes, because we don't like that feeling, do we? We don't like to feel that we're not communicating. So I can imagine what it would be like for someone who's not feeling the ability to communicate. If you speak more than one language, which one, if any, would you identify as your heart language? In which one is easier to describe how you feel? So most of us in here